Hi everyone, how is it going? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Astrid. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you want to have more videos on important topics like we're gonna discuss today. And before we start this video, I do want to mention that I am not an expert in all the things that are going on in the Middle East. I do not have any connection there. I do not have any family. By doing this report, I do not want to create any more division. I just want to share some astrological insights with you guys. So I do not want to create any more division. I'm not here to share my personal opinion. I'm just here to highlight my astrological insights that I've noticed in some patterns that keep reappearing. So yeah, let's just dive in for today. And hi, Ma'am Jax. How are you? Thank you for joining. Okay, let's look at some charts. I've got a lot to share with you guys today. So, this is an important date for the whole conflict. And like, that, wait, I know that this is actually a spiritual war, and I'm sending prayers to all the people who are affected by our world leaders who decide to stir up so much chaos and hurt. They inflict so much hurt upon the people. And I just want to send out prayers to everyone who's badly affected by everything that's going on right now. So let's look a bit at the chart. So actually, this is October the 7th, 2023. And that was actually a very important date for the whole conflict because that was the time that the Hamas militants did the attack on the Supernova Festival in Israel. And something that stood out to me is that we see a Mars conjunct the South Node. And it's actually happening exactly on the rising sign for Israel. So Mars and South Node connections, they always put a big emphasis on violence. We also saw Mars-South Node conjunction happening during 9/11 as well. So keep that in mind because I'm gonna explain that further in video. But back then on October the 7th, Mars was also square Pluto. Pluto is at the bottom of the chart, indicating a lot of instability, especially for the homeland. The fourth house resembles home and where the people actually live. So we also see Uranus conjunct the Sun. Uranus back then was at 22 degrees, and Israel's Sun is 23 degrees. What's also important to know is that actually Algol, which is the demon star, is conjunct Israel's sun. And Uranus has been going back and forth over that point for quite some time now. And if we fast forward to today, we saw a Mars square Uranus during the attacks. So we see that whenever Mars makes a square aspect, which is exact here in this case, a Mars conjunct the South Node square Pluto exact. So whenever Mars makes challenging aspects with other planets, a lot of tension is stirred for sure. And whenever it conjuncts the rising, it always brings up themes of violence and attacks for the people, and especially the nation that is involved. In this case, it was Israel. And then something that also stood out to me is fast forward to today, the current attacks that we've seen in the middle of July. We see in Trump's chart that he has a Mars conjunct the rising. So again, this is exact, almost to the exact degree. So Mars conjunct the rising sign, always a time of violence and aggression, and it always comes up for the people who are currently going through that transition. So, and at the same time, because Trump is born with a Mars in Leo, and he is also Leo rising, which means he has a Mars return now currently happening. So whenever people have a Mars return, they, the Mars threats get very, very strong. and it's a time when someone really expresses the Martian themes. So then what I actually could not believe, and I'm telling you guys all of this for this reason, is that the Israeli operation was called Rising Lion. So Rising Lion, can you believe it? That is such an intriguing synchronicity, given that Donald Trump is a Leo rising. He is born with a Mars in Leo, and Mars in Leo was conjunct his rising sign. So you cannot make this stuff up, guys. Like, this is clearly proof to me that the elites are using astrology and are actually tapping into the energy of the planets. And whenever certain aspects happen, they use it to their advantage to stir chaos. And an important factor to add to all of this is that it's also happening around Trump's birthday. So this is Trump's solar return for this year. So the themes that arise in the surrounding days of your birthday are always key themes for the upcoming year. So here we see Trump's solar return, and we see that he has a moon in the fourth house in Capricorn. We're gonna have an intense full moon in Capricorn happening on the 10th of July, so within a couple of days. The moon is in the fourth house, which resembles themes of patriotism and also the homeland and actually the place where he lives. He's very, very emotionally attached to that. And his moon is in the sign of Capricorn. So the sign of Capricorn is about long-term implications. It's also about responsibility connected to the government. Capricorn resembles the government, and it also resembles people in authority. And we can see here in his solar return that his moon in the fourth house in Capricorn makes a quincunx aspect to his sun at the top of the chart. So that really indicates friction between the fourth house of homeland and his public role as president. And they're in a quincunx aspect, so that is always trouble. The 10th house is the house of reputation, career. It's also the house of the government. Actually, Capricorn belongs traditionally to the 10th house. So when we see a moon in Capricorn connected to the sun in the 10th house, there's a very, very strong implication on all the Capricorn themes. So the 10th house and the top of the chart, it is very, very visible. It is about his reputation. It is about his role of authority and the role he play in the outside world. So very, very strong here. He's going to be extremely visible in the next year. And Trump is actually born with a natal sun in the 10th house and a natal moon in the fourth house, which means that there's like a repetitive theme that is being highlighted here. And this actually means that a lot of the potential of his birth chart is actually coming into sharp focus right now. So another important theme here is that he is actually Virgo rising. So we're going to see the Mars conjunct to South Node happening now on the 20th of July. I've just showed it in the chart of Israel and everything that happened on the 7th of October. Mars conjunct to South Node is linked to very important events like 9/11. Trump is a Virgo rising, and the Sun, the Mars conjunct to South Node is going to happen on his exact rising within 20 days from when I'm filming this now. So another important thing that is going to happen is that in July, July the 26th, Mars will be at 23 degrees of Virgo. And that is the exact same degree of the solar eclipse that we just saw in Virgo on the 14th of March. So all these important themes get triggered again and are going to come up, and from the 20th of July until the 26th of July, happening on Trump's rising, that is going to be of very, very big importance to him. So Virgo rising, it is about health. It's also about service towards others. It's about little details. It's also an earth sign. Luckily, that's grounding. But Virgo rising is also a year of heightened stress, for sure. So Virgo is the sign of stress. The fact that Mars is going to conjunct the South Node exactly on his rising sign is indicating stress, troubles, can be troubles with health, can be troubles in regards to his service towards others. Either way, Mars conjunct the rising sign can also be a time of heightened violence, heightened attacks, heightened inflammation, actually. So this is actually very, very important, and we need to keep an eye on what happens from the 20th until the 26th of July. It's going to be, not good for them at all. Then let's rewind a little bit, because I want to highlight the Saturn-Mars synodic cycle. So whenever two planets meet, they plant a seed. And from that point, a new synodic cycle is starting. So a synodic cycle, I look at it as the conjunction, the square, the opposition, the square, and then it renewals. So whenever there's a seed being planted and it goes towards a square and opposition, and then it's actually in the first half, it's actually a waxing phase. As soon as it's been through the opposition, it's a waning phase. So that's also of big importance here that I want to highlight for this cycle. So what happened on April 2024? That were actually the first direct attacks, because on October the 7th, 2023, that were militants from Hamas. This date in April was actually the direct attacks. So that actually coincided with the Mars-Saturn conjunction that happened in the sign of Pisces. So in traditional astrology, Mars and Saturn, they are the two malefics. So they bring conflict, karmic reckoning, they bring crisis. So on April the 10th, 2024, a new 2-year cycle initiated the themes of open hostility and also escalation. And the start of this cycle effectively baked in the potential for repeated military confrontations between these two nations. So, Israel actually launched a highly provocative attack on the Iranian consulate in Damascus, and that killed senior Iranian commanders. So that then triggered Iran's unprecedented direct retaliation and sent over 300 drones and missiles fired at Israel. And the developments really anchored the entire Mars-Saturn cycle in direct conflict, really showing that the cycle would repeatedly express itself in warfare. And Pisces sign often gets overlooked in geopolitical astrology, but it's very, very crucial here, because the Mars-Saturn conjunction that set off this whole cycle occurred in Pisces, and Pisces is a sign of covert operations, really indicating that much of the conflict is happening behind the scenes, and the truth is not being told at all. Pisces also rules religion and spirituality, so that can be religious or ideological motivations, and the two malefics being conjunct really seeds a new plant in all these themes. It really plants a new seed in all of these themes. So really highlighting that it isn't purely a territorial dispute. It is about mythic and mystical narratives and themes of martyrdom, themes of religious war. They all play major roles in how all these actors actually justify violence. So Pisces is also the sign of boundlessness. It is the sign of oneness. That can be used in pro and con situations, of course, but this synodic cycle happening in Pisces is actually about diffuse and also about boundary crossing conflicts, meaning that the effects really bleed into the neighboring countries and societies. So the Piscean foundation is why clarity is difficult, because there's a lot of deception going on, and it really gives an overload of misinformation, really confusing the people. If we then look at the next step, that is the first square. So we just looked at the conjunction. Now we are looking at the first waxing square. So that happened on the 16th of August in 2024. Mars and Saturn reached actually their first initial hard aspect after the conjunction during this time. So predictably, that conflict reignited, and Israel assassinated senior leaders of both Hezbollah in Beirut and also of Hamas in Tehran, really escalating these regional tensions. So the square provided confirmation that the same conflicts and the same themes of conflict would really return with each and every Mars-Saturn aspect. And then let's fast forward to this year, because on the 30th of March, Neptune entered the sign of Aries. And on the 25th of May, Saturn joined all the things happening in Aries. And Saturn entered the sign of Aries on the 25th of May. But if you look at the first half of 2025, we saw a Mars retrograde that started from December the 6th, 2024, all up into the end of February. So Mars retrograde. Whenever a planet goes retrograde, it's like you can look at it as an arrow that is, or a bow, and an arrow that is stretched backward. And then whenever a planet goes direct, it's like, and the arrow releases. And that's what we really noticed in the last couple of months. We had the Venus retrograde happening at 10 degrees of Aries, and Iran's sun in the chart of the Islamic State. So wait, I'm going too fast. There's just so much I want to share, but we saw a Mars retrograde. We saw a Venus retrograde, and the Venus retrograde started at 10 degrees of Aries. And for Iran, there are two charts. There is one for Khomeini, whenever he arrived and the revolution began, and there's then one chart whenever it became an Islamic State. In both charts for Iran, there's a big emphasis on the first 10 degrees of Aries. So whatever chart you take, they both resonate with what's going on right now. So in one chart, there's a moon at 7 degrees of Aries, and in the other chart, there's a sun at 10 degrees of Aries. So we have Venus retrograde at 10 degrees of Aries. That started in March. We then had the Mercury retrograde that started in Aries in March, and that was on 9 degrees of Aries. We also saw a solar eclipse in Aries, and that happened on the 29th of March, and that was also on a 9 degree. And then after all of this, Neptune shifts into Aries, and after that, Saturn moves into Aries. So there's so much emphasis the last couple of months on the first 10 degrees of Aries, which is actually very wild. I've never seen it before, and almost all the same 9 or 10 degrees. So that's why if you have an Aries sun moon arising in the first decan of a sign, which means the first 10 degrees, a lot has been coming up for you for sure. So Saturn in Aries, that is why everything is going haywire right now. Saturn represents structure. It's the karmic planet. It is the planet of limits and discipline, authority, control, also responsibility, karmic lessons. And the sign of Aries is, of course, the sign that's ruled by Mars, wanting to be first, strong desire to win, to be the best, take the initiative. It's about aggression, but also courage. It has a very pioneering spirit and a very strong individual will. So Aries is very impulsive, and that can lead to serious conflict. So whenever Saturn entered Aries and the two combinations, the two energies got combined, there's a big tension between discipline and raw action. Saturn tries to contain and structure Aries' impulsive fire, and that often results in tests of willpower, in confrontations with authority, the need to learn self-control, and also how to assert yourself in a very mature way. So Saturn's move into Aries really amplified all the pressures across the globe. Conflicts in Ukraine intensified, civil unrest in the US escalated, tensions in the Middle East really reached new highs, and Saturn ingress acted as this big pressure cooker moment, really magnifying all the global existing hostilities. And it will remain in Aries until the middle of 2028. But as soon as Saturn passes through Aries and it will then enter Taurus, from that moment on, it will start to square Pluto and Aquarius. So a lot of people are thinking right now, we're just going to wait until Saturn moves out of Aries and everything will be fine again. No, actually, I'm sorry, but Saturn and Pluto together, they like we just discussed, created a new synodic cycle, and that was in Capricorn. That was in 2020. We all know what went down back then. So in 2028, we will see the first waxing square between Saturn and Pluto. Saturn is pressure and limits and boundaries, and you cannot go out of your house. That was Saturn. And Pluto is control and abuse. So actually, or abuse of power and control. That was what the new Saturn-Pluto synodic cycle seeded. So in the summer of 2028, we're going to see the first waxing square between these two outer planets. So that is going to be intense. So yeah, if we look back at historic cycles, whenever Saturn was in Aries, it has been associated with militarization, and also the hardening of national identities, and also increased focus on sovereignty and its borders, and also the rise of leaders who project a lot of strength and also decisiveness, really testing the alliances due to a crisis that emerges that actually demands a disciplined response. Saturn in Aries, a disciplined response in themes like war and conflict. But the negative manifestation of Saturn in Aries is really authoritarian and very aggressive leaders. So it all really depends, like astrology has its potential, but it really depends on your own soul evolution and how you tap into the energy. So on top of that, we see Saturn and Neptune combined with each other. So Saturn and Neptune together, they resemble the collapse of old systems, the disillusionment of official narratives, and also attempts to build new ideologies or some new spiritual frameworks that emerge out of the chaos. The last Saturn-Neptune conjunction that actually happened in the sign of Capricorn, and that was in 1989, and that corresponded with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the whole Soviet Union. Now it's happening in Aries. So the flavor of Aries is way more martial and also way more volatile. So yeah. If we go on and if we fast forward to today, we see in the chart of the 15th of June that there's a Mars square Uranus. So that is an aspect that is associated with sudden explosive crisis. So that really became true. Israel launched unprecedented strikes on Iran's nuclear program and military leadership just before the square got exact. And Mars-Uranus, they really manifest in shocking disruption and also rapid escalation, precisely what unfolded with all these bombings. And Uranus is about to move into the sign of Gemini on July the 7th, and that really launches a new 8-year cycle that historically correlates with communication revolutions, also surprise alliances, and also sudden fragmentation. So when we look back at Uranus in the sign of Gemini, that correlated with major US wars. The American Revolution, the Civil War, and World War II. That were 3 big wars that happened whenever Uranus was in Gemini. So another big thing is that the first computers were built in the 1940s, and another new type of propaganda warfare became very, very central during that time. So Gemini also rules transports and logistics, can suggest a supply chain disruption or really new kind of tactics like drones and hypersonic weapons, and also cyber warfare. And yeah, the ingress also really hints that public narratives will rapidly evolve. Potentially also exposing secrets or redefining perceptions about all of these conflicts. And that will happen very, very fast. So Uranus shifting into the sign of Gemini on July the 7th really indicates cyber attacks that are going to disable infrastructure, and also artificial intelligence that is now a battlefield tool, and also cryptocurrencies that are used to finance conflict as well. So In the past, Mars-Uranus conflict, Mars-Uranus squares that indicate conflict, they actually weren't this volatile. But now we see Pluto in the sign of Aquarius, and Aquarius is the sign that is ruled by Uranus. So that's why these Mars square Uranus aspects are becoming way more intense for sure. But the real reason why we saw everything go sideways was actually because of two yachts that were happening on the 21st of June. So a yacht is the most difficult and tense aspect in astrology. They call it the finger of God. You can see here, these are all the green lines. You can see two fingers pointed. One is pointing at Pluto, another one is pointing at Mars. To have one yacht is already a big deal. Have two yachts at the same time with Pluto and with Mars in the picture. Pluto is control destruction, Mars is violence. This is very rare astrology. Mars is at an apex point of a yacht and Pluto is at an apex point of a yacht, and they both rule secrets and violence and things getting teared apart and things breaking down. So, and all the years that I do astrology, I've actually never seen this before. So Pluto is about hidden things as well. Neptune is also involved in the yacht. Neptune is about lies, deception, and we at the same time we see Jupiter square Saturn, which really indicates ideological conflict. So we have so much things happening at the same time. It is actually unreal. So the big question is, what happens next? The next thing I want to look at is the new moon in Leo that is going to happen on the 24th of July. If you look at the chart for Israel, yeah, we see a new moon happening in the 10th house, the house of government and authority, and it's opposite Pluto. So yeah, they look at the chart, like they are born with like born the chart is born, the nation, the mundane chart is casted with a Saturn Pluto conjunction in the 10th house. I just explained a tiny bit about Saturn Pluto together and how that is actually abuse of power. So a Saturn Pluto in the 10th house, that just resembles authoritarian leadership, control, domination, secrecy, abuse of power. Yeah, and the new moon in Leo is going to happen exactly in the 10th house for Israel. It's going to opposite Pluto in transit in the fourth house homeland, people, where the people are living. We're also seeing with the new moon in the 10th house conjunct the moon is actually the people of the nation. It can be that there's a total change in leadership, especially with the Mercury retrograde that is going to go over the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in the 10th. So yeah, intense revising or an intense revisit of their governmental structure. Some agreements and contracts will be relooked at and changed. Every decision that is going to be made under the Mercury retrograde is going to have negative implications, and it's going to be about domination and control from the government of Israel. And another important factor is that Pluto at the bottom of the chart, so Pluto in transit, will oppose Israel's moon of 4 degrees of Leo exactly in February 2026. That is really going to signify a profound societal upheaval and also psychological pressure on the nation's people, because the moon in the chart of a country resembles the people. So confrontations that are going to be very dramatic and intense, that are going to affect the people of Israel in a negative way, especially February 2026. So Pluto opposite the moon, it brings collective trauma, collective fear, a sense of existential crisis for the people of that nation. And it can also trigger very deep transformation and regeneration. Israel is going to emerge very, very different from this whole process. Then if we look at what it's doing for Iran, so this is the chart that dated back to when Ayatollah Khomeini arrived in Iran and the revolution began. And the revolutionary chart for Iran features an Aries rising. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction is exactly at the rising. Exactly, it's going to go exactly over the moon. So Saturn crossing this important point in the chart really suggests challenges and constraints. And then Neptune is going to pass over that as well. And it brings a lot of confusion and disintegration. And together they really forecast deterioration of stability for Iran over the next couple of years, especially next year, actually. But then we see Pluto in the 11th. That is going to go over the whole Aquarius stellium, and it will only intensify all of these problems. So yeah, and then the Saturn Neptune, it is about dissolving of regimes, dissolving of unions, dissolving of alliances as well. So very challenging combination for the general conditions of the country. Can be actually with Neptune, dissolution of the country can also be a lot of confusion for the people who live there. So a very, very big potential for the foundations of stability and the identity of Iran to crumble over the next year or so. So Saturn is going to restructurize in the next couple of years, and then Neptune is going to dissolve everything. So I think Iran's regime can collapse. And my guess is that it will happen between February and May of 2026. And next year, we're going to have a very big, intense stellium in the sign of Aries. Stellium means that there are 3 or 4 planets in one sign, or 3 or more. That's how I meant to say it. So yeah, I'm going to highlight the Aries stellium later in this video. So Pluto, that will eventually cross over the stellium in Aquarius here for Iran, is going to really intensify the transformative and potentially destabilizing influences. So Pluto also on top of Mercury, like Mercury resembles cities in a country, in a chart of a nation, and Pluto over that can be very literal destruction of cities. And I'm sorry that I haven't been looking at the comments a lot. I'm trying to keep my focus, but hey, Mim, Jax, and Claudia, and Stain, and Blue Moon Rising, and Inge, thank you all so much for joining. And we're going to look at the next big configuration, because on August the 8th, 2025, this year, we're going to see a next aspect between Saturn and Mars. So, and all previous Mars-Saturn hard aspects of the synodic cycle, there have been exchanged attacks. So the opposition is going to mark a very, very important point in the cycle, really signaling a very high probability of this renewed military escalation, potentially on a larger and even more consequential scale. So, and we're not only seeing the opposition is actually part of an extraordinary kite configuration involving Saturn conjunct Neptune, trines and sextiles to all the outer planets, to Uranus, to Pluto, and kites actually often coincide with disasters and massive turning points. This will be a very unpredictable transformation, even potentially involving nuclear technology, and very, very big geopolitical realignments happening. So nuclear weapons actually come up every time with context between Saturn and Mars as well. So, and what also always comes up with nuclear weapons, that are UFOs. UFO manifestations are directly linked to nuclear developments in historic cycles. And Uranus entering the sign of Gemini on July the 7th is going to supercharge all these weird phenomena. August will be very, very profound. So, thank you, Ma'am Jax, for hyping people up to share the video. Thank you so much for all your support. So then the next thing to look at is the 7th of October. We have a full moon in Aries, and how weird is that we're going to have a full moon in Aries on the 7th of October. That is like the exact same date of everything that happened at the Supernova Music Festival in 2023. So very strangely, synchronicity. But the full moon in Aries is gonna close out the eclipse cycle that actually ended on the 29th of March. So if you want to have more info about all the things that I predicted, you can look at my solar eclipse in Aries video. I posted that somewhere in the middle of March. Then I went over a lot of charts of countries saying that the solar eclipse in Aries would stir a lot of conflicts in the 6 months that follow. So the full moon in Aries will be the first moon that is not part of an eclipse cycle anymore. And that is actually a rather positive thing. Luckily, it's not an eclipse anymore, but still it is connected to the seed that was planted on March the 29th, 2025. So this full moon in Aries, for Iran, it will happen on the moon of the chart of Khomeini, so conflict for the people again, but a full moon is a culmination and an ending. So hopefully we will see something being culminated for Iran. But we also have another chart for Iran, the one where it became an Islamic state, and in that chart they have a sun at 10 degrees of Aries. So it will be conjunct the sun and the moon for both charts of Iran. So either way, this full moon will be conjunct both luminaries, and that is about identity. It's also about leadership and also about the people. So all these things are going to come up again in October. Then the full moon in Aries for Israel, it will be opposing their rising sign because Israel is a Libra rising. And the weird thing is that Libra is actually about peace and harmony. So the full moon will oppose their rising sign, which means that it will happen in the sign that rules the seventh house. And the seventh house resembles open enemies. And it's also going to oppose Neptune in their 12th house. So again, covert tactics, things happening in secret, deception from Israel during this time. And Mem Jack says there are going to be radical changes coming right up. Yes, it's gonna be intense the next couple of months. I think it's going to be a build up until April 2026 when we're going to have a whole big stellium in Aries, where I'm going to go into that as well. So then the full moon in Aries, for Trump, it happens in his 8th house of intensity and crisis. And for the US Sibley chart, so for the Declaration of Independence for America, the full moon in Aries is going to fall in the 4th house of homeland and borders. And it's going to square the sun in the 8th house exact. So troubles for leadership and crisis in regards to the identity of the country for the US as well. So this full moon will be trouble. I'm just gonna be honest. Then the second square. So we saw already the first square. We're gonna see the opposition in August, and then we're gonna see the second square on December the 9th. So this will be then a closing square to where a new seed will get planted the next time Saturn and Neptune meet, Saturn and Mars meet. So this is gonna highlight all the teams again. The second square on December the 9th. I'm not gonna go too deep into that. I'm just gonna switch over to the Aries stellium because that's actually very important. So here you see it. This is the time when a new synodic cycle is gonna start between Mars and Saturn. So during the Nova Star attack, the synodic cycle started in Aquarius. During the attacks we've seen now, or no, it was Capricorn still. It was Capricorn, excuse me. And then during the attacks that we've seen now, the synodic cycle was in Pisces, and the new synodic cycle that will start in 2026 will happen in Aries. So yeah, again, emphasizing the themes of conflict and war for the next 2 years until we see another waning square, another waxing square in opposition, a waning square, and a new conjunction. So this one starts in the sign of war. And this again will be impacting the moon and the rising sign of the chart of the Khomeini for Iran in a very, very big way, because the moon is 7 degrees of Aries. So actually, the new synodic cycle starts exactly conjunct the moon of Iran. So that is actually wild. And also exactly conjunct the sun for the chart of the Islamic State. So either way, again, they are affected by all the things that are happening in Aries. And Mem Jack says, I think we get a break in 2029. Yeah. With the square from Pluto and Saturn that will be ongoing, I think we're gonna have to wait a little bit longer, and I think we're gonna have to wait until 2032. And like, don't freak out. That doesn't mean that like your whole life needs to be chaos and upset until 2032. No, in 2032, Saturn and Uranus are going to conjunct at the end of Gemini, and I think after that we're going to see a big switch. But in 2028, 2029, 2030, the square between Saturn and Pluto will still be playing out because it's such a slow moving transit. So just, yeah, gonna be honest. Things will get better, and like something I want to maybe mention in between all of this is that even though the energy for conflict is triggered and emphasized for certain countries, yes, that doesn't mean that it's going to affect your whole life until 2032. No, I think we should all stay in our center, keep spreading love, and not feed into the fear tactics and not feed into the whole war propaganda that we're gonna see going on for the next couple of years. I think it will be very, very important that we spread love, that we meditate, that we take care of ourselves and other people, and that we just know that this is all indicated by the stars, and it doesn't need to go towards World War III. No, tension is going to rise, but that doesn't mean that your whole life needs to be one big conflict. Like, if of course you are an Aries sun, moon, or rising in the first decan of Aries, like the first 10 degrees, then this is going to have a bigger effect on you than if you're another sign. Also, Libra in the first 10 degrees will be greatly impacted by this. Actually, all the cardinal signs, which are, of course, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. So, yeah, that is going to be different for, it's going to be different for, depending on which sign you are. So let's keep spreading love and take good care of each other, and just know that it's just a pattern recognition, and that things are realigning again. And I'm going to explain a whole lot about big turning points in my video that I've prepared for Uranus and Gemini, because every 1880, so 80 years, we see a big turning point, and we're now exactly on that point now, starting within 8 days. So but I'm gonna try to explain that in my Uranus entering into Gemini video. So let's just all love each other, and let's not forget that spreading love and rising to a higher timeline is really gonna decide everything right now. We all need to just, like, actually, peace, it all starts within yourself, and to not let the outside circus really get into your inner center. I think it will be very, very important to keep grounded and to keep tapping into the love energy and not tapping or feeding into the fear that they are going to try to spread. So, yes, Mem Jack says it all play out, just center ground, observe, and don't absorb. That is very, very wise. Thank you for sharing. So this is yeah, the 2026 stellium in Aries. So profound transformation of the state, especially for Iran, and yeah, can be a regime change for sure. So yeah, stellium in Aries, I'm gonna be honest, that there's gonna be an escalation of conflict for all of countries, to be honest. I think this will be a very, very important point in time to reassess where things are going. But I would advise everyone to just be prepared, have some extra food, have a satellite phone, go to the gym, make yourself healthy, make yourself strong, get your health in order, especially with all the eclipses that are now currently playing out in Virgo and Pisces, which is mental and physical health. Just fix yourself, because the government is not going to do it for you. I think that is pretty obvious by now. So, yeah, this is going to be an important time. Then, if we look at the US Sibley chart, I'm quickly, before I head out or before I wrap things off, I'm going to highlight some specific dates for America, and that will be, of course, October 7th. The full moon in Aries is going to square the sun in the 8th house, and it's activating a very tense T-square between house 4, 8, and 10. These are cardinal houses. This is one, 4 and 10 are cardinal houses, but this is a time when there's going to be a lot of friction for the US. Something is going to change in regards to identity or leadership. It's going to possibly be a major shift. Can be also a culmination of something about national focus, and yeah, it's creating a very intense T square. And like to give a resembling team, Kamala Harris had a very intense T-square between the 4th, the 10th, and the 8th, with Saturn involved. It's very, very likely. And that is the time when she lost and when she had to step out of the race, or like that is the moon that like became very obvious that she will not win. So that is like a resemblance. Then on February the 17th, first the 3rd of January, that is going to be another very intense full moon that is going to be conjunct the sun, again creating another intense T-square, again with Saturn in the 10th house involved. So look at how the full moon on October 7th activates the sun and Saturn in the 10th house, and then this moon is gonna again create an intense T-square between the sun and Saturn. So yeah, sun and Saturn, it's about authority, government. Another big T-square. This is when things really are very, very tough and very, very challenging. Then on the 17th of February, there's gonna be an eclipse, a solar eclipse conjunct the moon. So as I already mentioned, the moon in a chart of a nation resembles the people. So there will be a solar eclipse exactly conjunct the moon of the US Sibley chart, and it's going to square Uranus exact. Mass revolt, mass rebellion, mass protests, that is going to be incredible. Like, I'm going to be honest, like, I know things are very tense. I know with all the No Kings protests and all the other things, but like, how I'm going to share a little bit about my personal opinion, and I don't normally do that a lot, but my intuition tells me that they want you to go protest. They want you to go throw that brick. They want you to express anger, and they want you to create and stir up chaos, because then it's very easy for them to implement their control mechanisms that they're so happily to install on everyone. So I would just be mindful about protesting. I think the biggest protest happens when you feel centered and loved at home. That is for me the ultimate protest, to be honest. And to take care of each other and to love each other and to have dinner with each other and crack some jokes instead of going into this negative spiral. But I digress. So the eclipse on the moon is going to be a massive redefinition of public consciousness as well. Mass rebellion. Later, the Mars will also conjunct the moon. American people will be very, very pissed off in the last 2 weeks. Actually, from the 17th of February until middle of March, all the way leading up to April, will be very chaotic. We also see at the same time a Saturn-Neptune conjunction, exactly conjunct the EC. The EC is the border, so tensions between ideology and national interests will get heightened again, because then we're going to see the exact conjunction of Saturn-Neptune. That's also going to happen by the end of February. So yeah, ideological battles at the US borders are going to be very, very big as well. And then with Uranus going into Gemini, yeah, tense situations, guys. Like, I just want you all to be safe and not to worry, and just to have a heads up and to prepare and to maybe, yeah, retreat and yeah, just retreat and share love. That is the only tip that I can give you. This will also be a time, the first part of 2026 will be a big time of a reassessment of the global role that America plays here on Earth. Can be about a renewed national identity as well. Yeah, possibly also involving or possibly involvement in conflict hitting the US borders between February and April. So yeah, I wish I had some more positive news, but the astrology, it is what it is, and it doesn't need to be the worst case scenario. Like, I am a Virgo rising, I am always prepared for a worst scenario, but that is just like me, and it's actually not a positive or not a healthy threat that I own. I think we all need to tap into trust and surrender, and to know that this is just all guided from up and above, and it is just a pattern repetition and a pattern recognition. And all we can do, all I can do is give you guys a heads up, and to maybe take the necessary precautions. So yeah, the big question is, will there be a World War III? Escalation seems inevitable, especially February 2026, especially August now in 2025. But just know that all the major wars really correlate with waning outer planet cycles. So waning means closing, while all the current big cycles right now are actually or mostly waxing, so beginning and not ending. So that indicates expansion rather than destruction. But with all the things happening in Aries, it does suggest regional conflicts are going to intensify for sure. But I think a full-scale World War III is less likely. Nevertheless, the upcoming months are going to be very, very heightened in turbulence, particularly in August. So, yeah, watch for the spring of 2026. But also with Uranus moving into Gemini, there will be a big exposure of hidden agendas. And that will happen in all three nations that are involved, or all the nations that are going to get involved in some kind of conflict. It's actually also about a renewal of alliances. It's also about spiritual awakening. It's about people evolving and tapping into a higher timeline. And it's also about reconstruction of the nation's identities. So astrology shows potentials, not certainties, and the power of intention, the power of collective action, and also diplomacy can really reshape all of these energies. So Jupiter is in Cancer, even though that expands emphasis on homeland security. It is also an aspect that offers real hope, and also shows us that true happiness can be found at home right now. Jupiter is optimism, hope, abundance, and it's currently operating in the sign of Cancer, which is our home and our family. So when the world out there gets too crazy, just focus on your family and on tightening those bonds with each other. And we are in a time of global awakening and not only conflict. And I think that will be very, very important to repeat that to yourself whenever you feel overwhelmed by the outside circumstances. So yeah, while all these cycles can feel overwhelming because so much is going on at the same time, I told you in January this year that all the planets would shift signs, and normally that happens within. We only saw it happening one time before, and that was over a stretch of 5 years. Now it's happening in 1 year, like almost two with Pluto, because Pluto is already in Aquarius, but all the other planets are shifting signs this year in 1 year. That is absolutely nuts. Like, I have no time period to look back on, or it was during the end of Babylon. It was more than 3,000 years ago. So, yeah, it's important that astrology shows patterns and not inevitabilities. And also, even in times of conflict and fear, the same alignments that reveal crisis, they also contain the seeds of transformation and healing and renewal. And history has shown that humanity often finds its greatest breakthroughs just when it seems like the darkness is winning. So each of us has a role to play in how these energies manifest. So whether that's through staying transformed like you're doing now, that is already helping the collective consciousness, or by supporting peace and love, or simply cultivating more compassion in our daily lives, like the North Node, destiny and our path forward is currently in the sign of Pisces. It is about compassion. It is about forgiveness. It is about it's about loving each other without I forgot the name, sometimes in English. Sometimes I wish I could do it in my own West Flemish accent. That would be like a whole vibe. But it's about love that is not restricted, unconditional love. Oh my god, there it is. It's about unconditional love, Node and Pisces. So the planets are messengers, and they're reminding us that nothing is set in stone, and that awareness is power, and that collective intention can change the whole story. So take care of yourselves, and stay connected, and also remember that we are living through a time of awakening as much as a time of challenge. Like change always triggers resistance. So and I'm gonna quickly look at the comments. Beam and beam. Mem Jack says, hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you so much. And Stain, yes, thank you for helping Stain. Love without condition, unconditional love. And Mem Jack says, let's do that one day. Share some words in your language. Yeah, but like, I'm gonna be honest, the West Flemish accent, it is really even people who live very close by have difficulty understanding that, but that's like a whole other conversation. Either way, thank you all so much for watching, and if you found it valuable, consider sharing it with other people who might be in fear. Maybe if they gain some more insight that can calm their fear, even though things will get turbulent and chaos will be stirred. It is all destined from the planets in the sky above. So I hope the astrology really empowers you and informs you and inspires you. And together we can all navigate these times with a lot of clarity, courage, and hope. So thank you all so much for watching. And I'm sending all my prayers out to you. Yeah, I'm just like, we can all meditate on peace together. And I think that is the only thing we can do. So thank you all so much. And I will see you back soon for my Uranus entering into the sign of Gemini video, where I will go into all the turning points that we see every 80 years and why this ingress is going to be very, very special for the whole collective consciousness. So thank you all so much. I wish you a good night, and I will see you back soon. Bye bye.